As it turns out, the repair kit, or the rebuild kit for the calipers, came with the two washers for the internals, the two square washers like this. So I decided to pull the calipers right apart so I can do a final clean and rebuild them from scratch with all the rubbers. So these washers go in here, one there, one in here, and when I pull the caliper apart, this is the left-hand caliper, that's the right-hand caliper. They were like this. So you can see the bolt which attached them to the car is on this side, the left-hand side of the left-hand caliper. And this is the bolt pattern for the putting them together. So the actual bolt itself is on the right-hand side, the nut is on the left-hand side. So the nut is on the same size as the hole for attaching it to the car. So that's how it's come apart. It's a 14mm socket and a T45 hex. Okay, today we are going to rebuild the calipers of the 220 Mercedes. And what we've done so far is cleaned all the gunk out. We've split them in half. We've used wet and dry, 600 for the really rough stuff around in here, then 1,000 for just on the inside, then 2,000 so we've got it nice and smooth. We'll be very gentle doing it though, because we don't want to take too much stuff off and have a problem with the bore. So that's what we've done. So what we need to do today is rebuild them, put the new seals in. A square seal goes in on the inside of the bore, just in here. Then we have the new pistons. New rubber seal goes across on the piston, in like that. That fits into the groove here and then slides over this part here. And then once that's in, we put the heat shield on, like that, which also fits in. And it's got a couple of grooves just here. You can see the grooves on the piston. That's where the heat shield sits. And this cutout here goes on the back part where the pads go in. So it's got to face this side. So one facing that way, one facing that way. These two halves then come together and we'll put the bolts back in. Oh, let's just rebuild them first. When we do put the bolts, when we do put two halves together, little square seals again, and they sit here and here. So first things we do is we get some brake fluid, because we want to have brake fluid lubricating all the seals and the bore. So get some fresh Dot 4 brake fluid. A little bit in the bore. And that can just sit there and just lubricate all through the bore here. We have to be very careful though when we put the piston in, because it's going to have a little bit of brake fluid there, it's going to come out through there. So we just soak the square brake fluid. Just got to be careful putting these in because they're a square, not a round, and sometimes they want to bend back on themselves. So you've got to make sure that it's the right surface in all the time. And that one's in. popped in really easily. Now is make sure that the piston's really well lubricated as well. Now it's best if the seal, the outside seal goes on before the piston goes in, so it makes it much easier to get it in. Okay, that just slips over onto the, just like that, into the groove here. So we'll just check that it's all in the groove, which it seems to be. Make sure the heat shield goes on when it's facing that cutout to where the brake pad goes, which means it's there. And hopefully the piston will just slip straight in. So we'll just make sure it's really well lubricated on that and on the piston. Now just be careful here, because this is where some of the fluid may come out. So I'll just cover those off a bit so we don't cop any in the face. That seems to have gone down a bit. And the piston's just slipping in there really easily. Okay, now that's there, we'll just take the heat shield off again, and we'll push on the seal on the outside to make sure it's seated properly all around. Okay, the seal's on, the heat shield just goes on like that and sits there. That's the first one done. Okay, now that we've got those two in place, and just check the seals are, the outer seals are where they're supposed to be. Just give that a bit of a tap. Okay, we need to bring the two halves together. Before we do that, we're going to get the little square seals. Put them in place. Again, we'll just put a bit of brake fluid on to lube them up so they're all nicely set in the right place. I've got the bolts set aside here. What we'll do is bring the bolts in. I'll put some WD-40 on them so they're not going to stick. So we'll get all those four in. And they're being set aside in the same pattern that they came out in. So we get all those four in. So when we put the top part on, we're not losing the seal. Just double check those seals are in there. They are. We're bringing this together. Okay, now that it's together, we will not let it apart. Let's get the bolts all the way through. We know the seals are set in place now. Okay, there's no washers, so the bolts will just go straight on in the same order they came off. Just do finger tight for each of them. They need to be torqued up to 24.6 foot-pound, which will convert into Newton meters shortly. But the way you do it is the inner bolts have to be torqued up first halfway, then the outer bolts torqued up halfway, then you torque the inner bolts up full way, and then the external bolts or the outer bolts full way too. Okay, now we need to torque them up, and we're going to be using a T45 Torx and a 14mm socket. Okay, so the halfway point is 16 Newton meters, and it's 34 Newton meters for the full length. So we'll do the inside bolts first to 16 Newton meters. We'll have to split the torque wrenches because the little big one doesn't go down too far. So we've got this set at 16. Okay, at 34. So again, inner bolts first. Okay, they're at 34. We've got to put this back in. It's a 9mm spanner. We'll put a bit of brake fluid on the thread. And let the threads back in. 2 came in the kit. I'm just using the one which is the same length as the one I took out before. So just nip that up gently, cap on. Now that caliper is done, ready to go. So the left hand caliper is done, now the right hand caliper. This is the one that actually caused a bit more of a problem before I took it off the car. Okay, that's not going in very easily at all. Okay, we'll pop this one back out. Just use a bit of compressed air just to pop it out. Just make sure that it doesn't hit us in the face. Like that. Okay, we need to put a bit more lube on this time. I'll just make sure the seal is still nice and wet in here. This is the one that's sticking the most, so that's probably why it's doing this to us. If it doesn't go in nice and easy this time, we'll probably have to do a bit more filing around on the dirty edge. Out there. Okay. Seems to be seating a bit more easily this time. Now we'll bring the two halves together.